And good evening, everyone. ESS Empire State Sports proudly presents the Wise Guy Sports Talk Show. Your host tonight, Joey Ream, Dave Bartlett, and myself, Pete Goslaw. And our very special guest tonight from the Watertown Daily Times, dating back to eternity, Mr. Cap Carey. Welcome to the program, Cap.
Thank you.
Now, I read a little blog today. You've been there since '93. That true or false?
The very last week of '93, I got here in December. Started on the 27th, I believe, if my memory's right. So I had to wait a couple of days to work because the day I was supposed to start working, it was 40 below zero and my car wouldn't start. So I had to delay a couple of days till I could get a battery jumped.
I guess that's as good excuse as any, especially in your area.
Yeah, I walked down to the Canton office and they didn't know who I was. And they were like, I hope you're not our new sports writer, because they thought I would quit,
So, Cap, for people that are listeners and watchers that don't know who you are, maybe you could do a little bio yourself and let us know what you're all about.
Well, I grew up in Southern California, a town, Manhattan Beach, which is a couple cities south of the LA airport. And wanted to become a sports writer when I was in high school. I used to watch The Odd Couple, and I always thought Oscar and Madison had a pretty cool job. So that got me interested in it. And then went to the University of Arizona. My dad's family's from Tucson, so I went there for 4 years. And then was working a couple of years as a part-timer at the Los Angeles Times because I graduated during a recession, so nobody was hiring. And then I had relatives in the Binghamton area, so I went back in '93 and moved, around July, lived with one of my cousins for a couple of months, and the Watertown Times had an opening, so I applied, and that's kind of how I wound up here.
So you go from you go from a place where you probably don't have to worry about your car not starting due to cold to the worst place in the world for a car not starting due to cold.
Yeah. The one plus is it's a little safer. Like I went to a lot of high school games in Southern California that were in some shady areas where if a car backfired, everybody ducked on dove because they thought maybe it was on fire. I went to one game where you had to walk through metal detectors and stand and hold your arms up while they ran a wand over you before they let you in, because it was the Bloods High School playing the Crips High School. So
who would even schedule that?
Well, I saw some good athletes. Like I saw I went to a game that Tina Thompson played in when she was in high school, and I saw Paul Pierce play in high school and a few people like that. So I got to see really good athletes, but that was the cost was you're also in some pretty rough neighborhoods at times. Yeah.
Well, what led you in this direction? Did I miss that part?
My parents, my dad was going to retire. He worked in the art department of the LA Times, like doing graphics and stuff. And he was going to retire, and they were going to move to Hawaii. And I didn't think that the new people would let me keep my room. So I had to make other plans. And we had a house. My parents owned a farm that belonged to my dad's uncle near Scranton, Pennsylvania, kind of between Binghamton and Scranton. So I was going to move there originally, but we couldn't get the tenants out. And by the time they did, I wound up getting hired by the Times. So I just stayed up here. So I came out here in '93, kind of not knowing what I was going to do. I didn't have a job or anything lined up. I just, came out here and worked for the Scranton newspaper part-time for the fall in '93. And then I got hired by Watertown around December 1st.
And you've called it home ever since.
Yeah, I've been here. So I actually lived in Canton now longer than anywhere else I've ever lived. I did the math a couple of years ago on that. So, yeah. And I've actually stayed in the same place because I live upstairs in a house, and I didn't want to move all my stuff down the stairs again. So I've been in the same apartment since the kid got here too. So.
Well, Cap, we had Al St. Pierre on, and I've been trying to get in touch with the Gokester, John Goki, but I haven't been able to. And obviously John retired this year. Give you a chance to talk about some of your fellow coworkers up here in the North Country that you deal or dealt with on a daily basis.
Yeah, they've all been here pretty much since I got here. I mean, John Turcott used to work for the Plain Dealer, so he was one I knew the best because he was in our office more than any of the other guys were at first. And then Dave and Al were Al was in our office until it closed. We had an office in Canton. Eventually they shut down. Now it's in Messina, so we all kind of work out of our houses. But Al was there, for the last 3 or 4 years. And then Dave was there for a couple of years, and then they moved him back to his house in Ogdensburg. And they're all easy guys to get along with and stuff. And also Steve Heaton, I couldn't forget him. He was really good at a lot of things that people don't always like doing. Like he was great at getting box scores on the phone and stuff like that. And so, John, I don't know as well. I've only seen him in person a few times because he's 50 miles away. But obviously we, exchange things back and forth as far as results. Especially if his teams are playing down here or vice versa. So. And the new guy seems pretty good too. I've talked to him on Twitter a few times, Evan. So hopefully I pronounced his name right.
Well, good. So what's it like right now in the? I know as an AD myself, that people are chomping at the bit in the media world. I saw a couple of our radio stations already list all the soccer games they plan on broadcasting over the next 3-4 weeks. Are you guys chomping at the bit to get out there, start taking some photos and getting some stories?
Well, we're still doing. I mean, one thing I can say that's been good about us is we've had some kind of a local story in sports every day since before COVID started. So we've been able to find things to write about. It's just games are fun to go to when you get a chance. So I covered some things I normally don't cover in the summer just to be out, something like the local club golf championships. I went to St. Lawrence Universities and to Partridge Rounds and also to a junior tour event. And, it's just a chance to go somewhere and do something and get out of the house. So, I was looking forward to going to tomorrow's soccer game. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So I have to wait a little bit to make a high school debut in colleges. I'm hoping we'll have college hockey by, around mid-November, but I haven't heard anything official yet. So.
Well, speaking of the game that you're not going to tomorrow, obviously we won't release this show for probably a week or two, but still. Yeah. Give us the story on what's happened in Governor. That
I fully don't know. That I was supposed to go to Salmon River Governor girls game. I figured I'd do that one because the only other game that was a decent matchup was at 7:00 at night, and that's too late, on our deadline on a Friday, unless it's a football game or something. So, but I didn't really hear too much other than something to do with testing in Governor. And they think somebody may have COVID, but they don't know for sure. I don't know exactly what it is. I just kind of saw that it was going to get postponed. So that, like I said, that kind of delayed it. The last thing I went to high school wise was when Mantor Warrington boys basketball won their state playoff game against was it Section 7? I forget who they played now, but that was back. Yeah, that was back in. That's the last thing I've been to in person. So I was kind of looking forward to going to some kind of high school event. And Mark Martin's always been very cooperative with us, and he likes, to see his team get publicity. So I figured it'd be good all around. Hopefully we'll get to one of his games this year. There's only 8 or 10 or 12 or so it'll be challenged, but we'll see.
But you just made me realize it. I mean, that's the last night I was at any live sports myself. I was there that night. Our girls played in.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they had the first game
in front of that Mariah Matter-Waddington game. So
I know.
So as I was leaving school today, the news of the day was that a mandate's been handed down, something to the effect that, I mean, if you've got any kind of symptom now, that you have 48 hours to get to your doctor to be cleared or something along that lines. And
just for athletes or anybody?
I think it's anybody. I think it's not just athletes. I think it's anybody within the school system.
Okay.
Especially the kids. And so immediately St. Regis Falls went remote now till for a week. They're going to try to come back on the 14th. That's the date I saw. But I'm like, if that's the case, this is going to turn into a nightmare. Because
that's a little bit much. I mean, I can see like pointing the temperature gun at people's heads, things like that, but not every fever is related to this either, which is kind of funny. Like you could have some other thing that's totally unrelated, but if you got a fever, they're not going to let you in. That kind of stuff is, some of it I think is over cautiousness and.
Oh, overcautiousness is right. And we've been in school now for a month, and, I sub in school as well as obviously being the AD. And we finally started getting used to a somewhat of a routine, not the routine we want, but this is the routine and we're starting to get used to it. Now, all of a sudden, here we go again. That it just feels like it's just going to be a matter of time before we're completely remote again.
Yeah, and our area is not doing that badly. That's one thing that bothers me is when I hear anybody talk, even nationally, that we need a national policy about these things. And I'm thinking, if one state is out of control, it's 3,000 miles away. How does that affect, like, I don't want to see everything shut down up here because another state that's not even close to us isn't handling their business well, or, so that kind of stuff alarms me when I hear talk about, having some kind of national policy about this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you there. It should be done by state, but obviously being in New York State, we're in a tough spot because we're getting mixed in with the city area. I mean,
yeah,
this is where we'd like to be able to secede over to Vermont because, I think they're going back. I think they're back to five days a week. I don't even know if they have 1 million people in that state. So it feels like St. Lawrence County, Franklin County, the North Country. Let's move over to Vermont while this is going on, so we can get our stuff in.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
Yeah. So what about Cap? Do you take part? I know the Watertown Times back in the day, you really covered the Syracuse. They covered the Syracuse Orange a lot. Do you guys? Is that you, or do you guys just take from?
No, we have an office in Oswego. And one of the guys who used to work in the Watertown office, Josh St. Croix, moved down there. He covers the Syracuse football and basketball games, mostly those two sports for us. We used to do lacrosse. I don't think we do lacrosse anymore, except for maybe once in a while a home game. But yeah, that's always been handled by somebody in the Watertown office. And then when we opened up that one in Oswego, that made more sense to use him. And he also will do occasional things like if there's a state championship or tournament game down in Syracuse where one of our teams is playing, it's a lot easier for him to go to the game than to send Al or me or somebody down there 2 hours away when he's 30 minutes away from, so that's how we handle those.
And you guys still go to print every day?
Yeah, every day. Well, we have a smaller paper Monday, but we do print 7 days a week. Monday, our sports section Monday is now just one page, and it's usually some kind of a feature. This week, I think it's going to be a story about Chris Bernard and Alex Boak and how they're handling the situation. Alex has an interesting situation because Cindy Canton's not in the conference, so he doesn't even know yet if he's going to even have any games, because if everybody sticks just to their conference, they'll be kind of out of luck. But hopefully he'll be able to get non-conference games. And then Tuesday we put all the stuff that we missed from Sunday into the paper, like the NFL wrap-ups and stuff like that.
So Cap, we've had Doc Shea on here and also he had mentioned all the changes have been going on over the years, and I'm sure you've seen a lot too, where you've gone pretty much from paper now. Everything's online. So can you elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, the internet's been great because when I first got here, I used to call it being an office hostage, but it'd be like a Friday night. We have every single thing in, but we got to wait for a fax to come in from like the Cornwall Aces or something, and so you're just sitting there trapped waiting. Now you can find things on the internet. If colleges were late back then, you had to wait for them, but now you can find their score. If somebody up here hasn't posted their results yet, you can usually find them on the visiting teams page, or so it's made easier in some regards to do that. And we used to have those ugly green computers with green lettering on a black screen that hurt your eye, and stuff like that. And now, like I said, I can kind of do things from my house because I've got a laptop that connects to our computer system, and so that makes it a lot easier in some regards. I think most of them have been for the better, and obviously the social media stuff. Not all the guys that I work with use it yet, but I think Twitter is important to use if you're a sports writer, because you can let people know things right when they happen. They don't have to wait for the newspaper to show up to find out about. Like when the last big thing I remember I got on Twitter was when Clarkson hired Casey Jones. I was the first person that heard about it. Even the school had to rush their announcement after I tweeted that he was being hired. So that kind of stuff is beneficial that we didn't have when I first started here.
I'm sure it's
the process too. Like, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'd say now it's easier too for coaches to get us results because we can just get them to email a photo of their scorebook, which is a lot easier than being on the phone with us, especially for sports like track, where it can take even half an hour to read a track box score to us over the phone while we're typing all the stuff down. And so a lot of the stuff has really been good. And I don't mind the electronic part of it. I actually read our newspaper on the e-edition. I don't get the actual paper. I just read it on my iPad, because I find that easier to do. Sometimes it's, especially in the summer, if you got the fans on because it's hot and your paper's blowing all over the place because you get a fan on. And so I kind of like the electronic aspect of things myself. And you can get things up immediately too. Like a story that I'll have in tomorrow's paper will be up tonight sometime on our website too.
Yeah, that would have been my follow-up question, but you already answered it. Was Do you miss
Oh,
the
yeah.
days of waiting for phone calls? Because I remember when I first started coaching, and I'm sure Joey can attest to this. You had to call, whoever your contact was, and sometimes the phone you couldn't get through because everybody was trying to call at the same time. So I'm sure the email or messages and
Oh, yeah.
texting makes it so much easier.
Yeah, it's a lot better the way things are now. It's a lot easier to get things in. The only bad thing is there's always people who don't ever get you the stuff you need. You always have, you're gonna have 24 high schools and all in play some sports, and so out of all those coaches, you're always gonna run into a handful that just never bother to get you results, which is tough. But most of them are very good about it. So that's one good thing is you only have a handful that can drive you nuts, where you kind of never hear from them or anything.
Well, I know that there's nothing better than a Friday night home game when Al St. Pierre is there right at the end, because I don't have to worry about going to the phone, sitting around. I can head right to the bar because he's taking a snapshot and he's got all the stories. So,
Well, we used to always have to call Rick Bartchesky at the DeKalb Bin. I remember that, or whatever that place was called. You never called his house; you called the DeKalb Bin. That's how you found him.
well, when he came on our show, I mean, he looked like he was living in a bunker or something. He middle of his garage, he had a couple of Jason-looking hockey goalie masks up on the wall behind him. I'm like, he's freaking me out.
Yeah, I ran into him at a supermarket a couple years ago in Canton. I hadn't seen him for years, because unless it's at a boys basketball playoff game or something, I usually wouldn't run into him. So it was kind of interesting.
So obviously, we've got we had what happened here last week with 3 North Country connections getting their hands on the Stanley Cup. And how was that reporting that, following that all the way through for you?
It was neat. I mean, I was rooting for them to win because I think it's neat when you get a chance to have the Stanley Cup come up here. I'm hoping that we don't get kind of gypped out of the experience because of COVID. But it was fun, and I have talked to Derek once before when he was an applicant for the Clarkson job about 8 years ago, and so I talked to him on the phone then, and he was really friendly. I'd never met him before, and I didn't really know Brian Putnam, so it was nice to get a chance to talk to him and meet him. I wasn't able to get a hold of Zach, but I did talk to his parents a couple of weeks ago for another story, and so. But yeah, it's neat to see, especially hopefully that they'll be able to bring it up here, because it would seem like a gyp to the players if you only win one cup and you don't get to take it to your hometown rink that year. Like I told Derek, maybe they can win next year too, just to guarantee that he gets a day with it.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully Pete hasn't let it out yet, but he was able to get in contact with Garrett last night, and he's going to come on again next week. So hopefully we can get an idea if the cup's actually going to get up here. Maybe by then he'll have a good idea, give us an honest answer. So
yeah, he told me and that it was going to stay in Tampa, but that the people were starting to revolt about that a little bit. So it depends whether the powers that be, pay attention or not. And I even said, they could always delay it too. I mean, if you can't do it now, do it next year. Just share the cup. Let Tampa have their day with it first, and then give it to the team that won it the year after or something. But they should be allowed to come home with it, I think, because that's part of the experience.
Well, and it's something that Pete and Dave and I haven't talked about yet. But something that kind of just clicked in my head this morning was I was talking to his sister. His sister works at St. Louis Central, and hey, he was he's one of the 2 assistant coaches from the Stanley Cup winning team. He now has to be considered. You would think that he's going to have a possibility of getting his own head coaching position. So it'd be interesting to see how this plays out, what he's thinking, what he wants to do. But yeah, I know that was an ultimate goal for him, was to be a head coach someday. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, because usually you go to the teams that win.
Yeah, I told him his resume.
Yeah.
And that he's catching up to Chris as the most famous person from Brazier. Yeah.
What's yeah, well, that's a debate. For the people that live in Brazier, I don't know. Kisser might be in our top 10 now. He might.
Well, I used to joke when Mickey's daughter went to St. Lawrence. I told Chris that she passed him as the most famous person from Brazier. So I've always kidding with Chris about being the most famous person from Brazier Falls.
The other thing we talked about this morning too, how if Derek does stay in Tampa Bay, over the next, assuming the baseball season ends, and it looks like it will, and the football season somehow makes it through. I mean, Tampa Bay's won the Stanley Cup. they have a legitimate chance, and they beat the Islanders,
Mm.
Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay Rays are about probably going to take out the Yankees here tonight or tomorrow, and they've got a legitimate chance to win the World Series. And then I think, wouldn't that be something to see a Tampa Bay Buffalo Super Bowl?
Oh yeah.
That would be possible. So, and I think the Super Bowl is in Tampa Bay this year.
I forgot where it is. Yeah, it could be. I haven't paid attention that much, but that'd be funny, especially for the New England. If Brady wins.
Oh yeah, wouldn't New England fans love that, to have Buffalo versus Tom Brady in the Super Bowl?
And if Brady throws the winning pass to what's his name, the tight end Gronkowski.
Gronkowski.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, Cap, why don't you? You've been there since 1993. Can you think of some of the bigger local stories, local events that just pop into your head that were big time, a big time field, big time doings that you can recall just off the top of your head?
Oh my! Stole my question.
Yeah, my favorite one would be the going to 2014, going to Quinnipiac to watch the Clarkson women upset Minnesota in the national championship game. Which was neat because at the time people forget how good Minnesota was. They had been like 89-1-1, I believe, in the games up to that game, and they were kind of untouchable. And they could score like 3 goals in a second, it seemed like, And I remember the day of the game, our former higher up called me to tell me what to do that night. He's like, you have to do some kind of special story about them making the championship game. He goes, I know they don't have a chance to win, but get a reaction story. Talk to people before the game. So before the game, I was talking to anybody I could find like President Collins and other people. And then I had to throw that whole thing out the window when they won the game because nobody. And it was one of those games that was, like I said, Minnesota had a scary team. So even when Clarkson was up 5-3, you weren't really comfortable yet. And I remember right when they got up 5-3, Minnesota scored almost 20 seconds after that to cut it to a 1-goal game again. So it was that was a special moment just because, nobody ever won anything up here before in Division I. So that was, kind of special to be there and see that in person. And then another one that would be high up locally was watching the St. Lawrence men's soccer team win the national championship in 1999. And so I went on that flight with them because it was Thanksgiving week and it was too hard to set up your own thing. So I just, got in the van with the rest of the team on campus and went to the, on the flight with them. And that was just a fun experience. And when we came back to town, they had a parade through Canton. Everybody had lined the streets from SUNY Canton to the movie theater, waving at the team as they came in. So that was kind of special. And the other big things professionally would be the Goodwill games when they were here in 1998, I believe, the Winter Goodwill games. That was kind of a neat experience to get to see, people like Dorothy Hamilskate and Ty and Randy Babylonia were there. And I talked to them about being back in Lake Placid for the first time. And I got to meet Ted Turner. That was kind of funny. And Craig Sager was there. And, and another one that would stand out would be the brain cramp here. Oh, going to Toronto when Rick Carlisle coached against Kevin O'Neill was like the first time we ever had 2 local people coaching a pro sports event against each other. And that was a fun experience too, especially because Kevin O'Neill was so funny. I remember after the game, he said that Rick Carlisle might win more than he does, but he has a lot more fun than Rick Carlisle does and stuff. So,
I believe that.
Yeah.
So, and then high school wise, obviously special to see Messina win the state title in person when Daryl Paquin was there. He was always one of my favorite coaches up here. And we'd had such tough luck in baseball games because you get there and usually you only have 1 pitcher and you win the semifinal and you don't have anybody left for the championship game. But that year they had 2 pitchers that were good. So I knew they had a chance. And so that was kind of fun. And also some of the state hockey championship games I've been to in the past were neat. And obviously, and also came back going to his semifinals. I went to 2 of his semifinal games at Potsdam. And I remember somebody from the Associated Press asked me who the best player on Potsdam was because he wanted to know who to shoot during the game. And I said, well, just keep your camera on the coach. You'll get plenty of fun shots. And right away, he was standing in the chair 20 seconds into the game yelling about something, So it was always fun watching his teams because he was so spirited.
Spirited.
Yeah, that was the light word for Steve. Spirited.
Yeah. Also the people too. I mean, you see I was here for Missy West. I got here when she was a sophomore, so I got to see 3 years of her and a guy like Brian Leonard. It's fun to see people that are nobodies and then they become somebody. It's kind of interesting. And same with the hockey players. I've been covering Clarkson since '96. You see guys like Eric Cole, Willie Mitchell, and they're just 19-year-old kids and nobody knows who they are, and then they become famous. And and now with the women's team is getting to be like that because the Clarkson women will probably have 3 or 4 people on the next Canadian Olympic team. which is, fun, especially when some of them come in that are really nobodies. Like Lauren Gable was a good player, but she wasn't anybody as a freshman where you thought, oh, this girl's going to be like the Patty Kazmaier winner someday. And so it's fun to watch them kind of develop into those kind of things.
Cap, what is your what's the percentage of you covering high school sports compared to college sports? I always wanted to know about that.
It depends on the season and the time of year. High school wise, we're kind of like we have 24 schools we're covering, so we can't obviously go to every single high school team's game. But the teams that get coverage of every game would be, well, not every game now, but Clarkson and St. Lawrence men's hockey, we go to one game a weekend when they're home. I cover both teams now, so I'll go to Clarkson Friday, St. Lawrence Saturday. With women's hockey, it's more just a few big games a year because they don't get the crowds yet to justify us going to every game. But I'll go to 5 or 6 regular season games and playoff games. In high school, it tends to be bigger games like playoff games, or if in football, we go to high school football, obviously, because that's a big sport, crowd wise. So that we try to go to high school football games every week as much as we can. But the other sports is more like it's got to be a big game or some kind of reason to be there. Like if it's midway through the season and both teams are undefeated or something, and we'll go to that kind of game. But we can't go because you got to remember, I also got to get everything else that happened that night. So if I'm at a game, like if I'm at a basketball game that doesn't end until 9:30, 10 o'clock, then I come back and I've got to write a story on that. And then I've got to chase down the other 20 games that went on the same night and get them in too. So some of it's more just a matter of feasibility, but between all of us that are around, somebody's usually got something every night. So
that would have been my next follow-up question is exactly what's the mileage coverage that you would do, but if you and then if you can elaborate on how many guys are actually working in concert with you to get all that information.
Well, we go through like anything I don't get emailed to me from a coach myself. At a certain point in the night, I'll start looking at the other guys because I can get on their computer systems too. And so I'll see if I don't have for example, if I don't have Norwood St. Lawrence yet, I'll look and see if Al's already got it. And if he does, I can get the box score off his site and do something. Or, mileage wise, it's not that bad. I'm tended in a typical 5-day week in the winter, I go to Clarkson on Wednesdays to talk to Casey Jones and some players for a Friday feature story. And then I go to St. Lawrence the day before that, which is in my town. And then games wise, Potsdam's only 10 minutes away. So if I go there on Friday and go to St. Lawrence on Saturday, it's not a ton of mileage. And high school wise, we tend to try to stay as close as we can because of deadline stuff. Like I can't go to someplace like Hammond that's almost 50 miles away and get back in time on a night game, in basketball season to get something in the paper. I'd have to catch them when they play like a Hubleton that's 15 minutes away. So we factor that in a bit too, because and also I know that the Malone Telegram guy is going to cover certain teams, so I would be stepping on his toes if I showed up at his at his game. Like if OFA is playing Malone in a big game and it's in Malone, I would know that he's going to cover that. So there's no reason for me to go out there. So we tend to do more features though in high school. Like we have a high school athlete of the week every week, and I do the All North awards that we have every year, and I have to write a feature on 2 or 3 people usually for those. So that tends to be more what I do in high school is features and then championship or semifinal kind of games.
Yeah, how do you split up that when championships are coming around? It's got to be a busy time of year. I'm sure it's busy
to
begin with, but when championship season comes around, I'm sure you're running like crazy.
Yeah, it's based on what's going on. Like if because you got to remember college things are going on at the same time. So if Clarkson and St. Lawrence are home on a weekend and there's championship games, I'm probably going to be at the Clarkson St. Lawrence games, and the other guys will be doing the high school games that night. But if they're out of town, then I'll be at the high school game. That's kind of how it breaks down. And also, we try to make sure, like I said, we remember who covers what. Like Al, I don't. If Al has a team playing, he'll probably be at the game, so I don't go to that. In hockey, I tend to do the second game when they have the doubleheader for Section 10 hockey. I do the second game because Al needs to get stuff done besides cover the game he covers. He's got to get photos in, so he does the first game, and then I do the second game because that's closer to the deadline. So just kind of that kind of stuff. You just kind of work out the map.
I'm sure.
John always covered them.
Go ahead.
Well, I said John always covered the Malone Messina games, so we always knew he was going to do whatever game was involving them when they play each other, because they play each other for the championship in almost every sport because they're the only 2 schools in Class A.
So how far south do you travel, Cap, as far as your coverage area?
Well, we Harrisville would probably be the furthest south, or Tupper Lake. Although we don't go to too many things at Tupper Lake because that's too far. If they're playing here, we'll go see them. But we'll have to go to something big, like if there's a Section 10 track championship there or something like that. But I would say Clifton Fine or Harrisville are the furthest I go in that direction, and that's only if it's something that's has a reason to go, kind of thing, you know.
So Cap, I guess with the part that I'm missing, and I'm figuring out now, is that you're strictly Section 10 then. So for Watertown, who's covering the Frontier League for you guys at the Watertown Times?
The people in our Watertown office, Chris Fitzgerald and Dan Mount and Phil Sanzo cover, the Frontier League teams. We don't really overlap. I mean, if we try to get to games, if there's a Frontier League versus Section 10 matchup on a weekend, that's the kind of game we want to go to because you can get two different coverage areas included in one game. So, for example, like if General Brown was going to play Messina in boys basketball and it's a Saturday afternoon, that's the kind of game we'd want to go to because you get two different fan bases kind of appeased in one shot kind of thing. So, but yeah, they do the Frontier League. And like when it comes to the all-star teams, we just kind of divide them as equally as we can. Usually, in basketball, they each have their own separate team. But in other sports like soccer, we just argue over little things like, do you have a goalie? If you don't have a goalie, I have a goalie. And then we try to make sure that one league has 6 and one league has 5. And then we switch it around on the second team. So, that's kind of how we do that. But I don't really deal much. I kind of joke that the Frontier League is no different to me than the Plattsburgh League or any other league I don't cover. They're just, other teams. I'm aware of what's in our paper, so I know certain people, but I don't really, follow the Frontier League as closely as I do our league.
So Watertown, when Watertown joined us again in Section 10 football, did that throw a wrench into your plans and how you attack NAC football with Watertown in it? Not
really, because the first Saturday game I went to last year was when Watertown played Governor in the opening game. If they're up here, we'll go. I mean, if they play a team from Section 10 in Watertown, somebody in the Watertown office will probably go to that. Like the championship game, I believe Canton played Watertown down there, and Chris Fitzgerald, I think, was the one who covered that game. So, the only thing it affected was I made sure when we did our all-star team that we didn't take people away from Section 10 that used to make the team to put a Watertown guy on. I said, if a Watertown guy makes a team, he's going to come out of the Frontier League numbers because we wanted to keep the team somewhat balanced. I mean, we already have more people from the Frontier League in football because they have more teams. So it's only fair that they're going to have more kids on the first team because they have a bigger league. And we only have like 5 or 6 teams playing up here and they've got, 12 or 13. So, but yeah, that's the only adaptation when Watertown joined the Section 10, make sure they didn't count it from our list of all-stars.
I
got to go back to
just
go ahead, Pete.
Go ahead. Let me do this one. It might not pertain to much, but I have to ask anyway. I always wanted to know who has the final say of what gets printed or put on, because there's all you guys are trying to put in your article for that particular night. Is there more than enough paper for everybody to put a blog in, or is that something that has to be decided by one of you guys?
Well, our editor's Greg Gay, but usually we kind of work this out among ourselves. Like we know what's going on, and certain things are always going to get in. Like I said, a Clarkson or St. Lawrence hockey game is going to get in. The St. Lawrence football game is going to be covered if it's a home game, unless there's something else going on at the same time. But for the other things, it's usually, like I said, we kind of know each other's who has what teams in the area that we kind of deal with. And we have schedules, like for features, we have a feature schedule and everybody has a turn when they have a high school feature to do. So there's not really any kind of bumping up of things. And even like with the case of tomorrow's canceled soccer game, I checked and I said to my boss that, I'm assuming the guy from Malone is going to cover a game. So maybe we can just run that one because I didn't really see any other viable games to go to, to replace the one that we're not going to, so it just, it kind of balances out in that regard. That's never really been a problem. And now that we have digital, we can put stuff in, digitally that may not show up right away in print if we had to,
I'm going to go back to something you kind of intrigued me because I love Lake Placid and I kind of recall the Goodwill games being there in 1998, but I don't remember it at all. But what else was there? Did they have a hockey event for that?
They didn't have hockey, but what I remember about it was how tiring it was because there was a media hotel in Saranac Lake, that old hotel in Saranac Lake. I forgot the name of it, the one that's like 5 stories tall.
Saranac.
Yeah, we stayed there, and you had to take a shuttle bus to Lake Placid. And so the first day, I remember leaving at like 6:30 in the morning to get on this bus, and then I was covering not bobsled, what's the other one? Luge. And luckily for me, Bob Alpha showed up because he was on his way to cover Clarkson's game on the road. He wanted to see some of the Goodwill games, so he drove me to the luge track, and we watched the luge event. But by the time you were done, you're getting back like at 1 o'clock in the morning, and then you got to get up at 6 o'clock again the next day. And so it made me wonder how people that go to the Olympics cover the Olympics, because that'd be like 14 straight days of that, and I only did it for 3 days and got tired, you know. But I mean, it was just a fun experience because you got to see stuff you know, like aerial freestyle skiing is really impressive to see in person. If you ever have a chance to go watch the World Cup when they have that, that's one of the best sports to see live, you know. And I jokingly said I thought I was going to die when I covered it the first time because I wanted to go up to the middle where they take off from and see what it looked like. And so I asked the guy how to get there. He says, "Oh, just grab that rope and walk up the hill." So I grabbed this rope, and it's going so fast, and the snow's like shin deep, and I'm trying to run as fast as I can because there's athletes behind me, and I'm afraid if I fall off, I'm going to roll their ankle or something and knock somebody out of the Olympics. And I really thought I was going to have a heart attack when I got to the top of that hill because I'd never run so far in my life in knee deep snow. And you know, but you know, and we saw things like the biathlon, which you don't always see, and ski jumping is kind of boring. I found after you watch 2 or 3 guys ski jump, you know, like what's the point? You know, they all look the same. You can't tell where you know. And I got to meet. I went to downhill skiing and got to talk to Peekaboo Street, which is kind of neat stuff like that. It was a fun experience, but unfortunately, like Ted Turner, I think ran out of money for it, so we never had it again. Yeah,
Yeah, that's true. That was Ted Turner.
Yeah. And we had Nancy Kerrigan in our van, which was funny too. Like we got in the media van and she was looking for a ride, so the guy let her in. So that was kind of a weird experience because it was a couple years after the Tanya Gate thing, you know. So that was kind of funny to have her in our van going back to Saranac Lake.
I bet that would have been funny to have a media. Now they have a mediathon. All you guys running up on all together. All the media guys running up together up a tow rope. I'm sure that would have been.
I didn't realize at the time you're supposed to sit in front of the rope and just let it pull you up. They didn't tell me that. You know, that you're supposed to like rest your butt against the back of it and hold it in the sides. But nobody told me that. They just told me to grab it and walk. So that's what I was doing. You know.
You bringing that up, it just makes me, you know. It would be awesome if Lake Placid somehow, some way could become that big event place again. But it's just things are so big now. Lake Placid isn't big enough to house it.
Yeah, it wouldn't. They always talk about they could maybe share an Olympics with another town nearby and have some of the outdoor events there. But like for example, hockey, I don't think you want to ruin the Herb Brooks Arena by turning it into an NHL size arena just to have one Olympics there. And you know, and speed skating is indoors now. They don't have an indoor speed skating facility, and so I could see them using it for like the bobsled and the luge and the skeleton and downhill skiing and things like that. But I don't see it as a feasible place for, you know, a lot of the indoor winter sports. They'd have to have that in Albany, or I don't like the idea of a 2-country event either. It would seem weird if Canada and the U.S. were hosting the same Olympics. You know, like I think that
they get. They got plenty of plenty of space over near the airport and the where the torch is over there near the where they have the horse grounds. I mean, you'd wonder maybe they'd build some sort of facility over there.
Except they still have a yearly horse show. Yeah, they have a yearly horse show every year though. That would build that. So
and it's huge.
Yeah. No, I just think it was a neat when they had it, but it kind of, I think it's past. Like the first time I went to Lake Placid myself, because I went to the '84 Olympics in Los Angeles, and the first time I saw Lake Placid, my first thought was, how in the world did this place have an Olympics? You know, because it was smaller than like Watertown, which is a suburb in California that only had 35,000 people. I couldn't believe a town that small had the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I was too young at the time to read it. And I was 14 during the Olympics, so I didn't read about all the traffic hassles they had and all that kind of stuff. But they had problems even in 1980 hosting the Olympics. So I can't imagine in today's world, especially just the media alone, would be too much for them to handle.
And I guess what I'm thinking is, like, you know, not that I'm thinking that Olympics would come back, but just even taking advantage of Whiteface for a major downhill event, or using the ski jumps for some major event, just a singular event with the luge, the bobsled, whatever.
They do have those. They have World Cups and World Championships almost every year. And those, I used to go to those when we were at evening paper and we had more time to get things in. I remember going to like the World Cup for bobsled, and I remember going to freestyle skiing World Cup and stuff like that. But you know, when we went to a morning paper, we didn't have it wasn't as easy to do that kind of stuff anymore. So we haven't been to, other than going to like Clarkson or St. Lawrence if they're in the men's Final Four. That's about the only time you cover something like Placid now. But we used to go to a lot of things. I even went to canoe racing once there. They had the U.S. canoe championships, canoe kayak championships. And that was weird because the kid from my street was there. I always go to things and I look at the list of people to see if anybody's from a place I've lived. And so I'm reading through this list and I see Manhattan Beach, California, and I see the guy's name and it doesn't really click yet. And then I read his bio and see that his dad's name was Helmut. And I remember, well, there was a guy named Helmut that used to live up the street from me. And it turned out this kid lived he was like one of my friends when I was a kid. He lived 2 houses up the street from me. And he was an Olympian canoeist. You know, so that was kind of funny to go to Lake Placid and run into somebody from your neighborhood in California.
All right. Well, you gotta dive in a little bit, because all right. So I guess I didn't realize that the canoeing was an event in the Lake Placid area. So where are they doing this?
It was a big deal at the time. They made a boathouse. They built the boathouse. It's actually still there. If you go to that little park in Lake Placid where people swim, there's a building there. That was the canoe team's boathouse. And they actually had the official site of the U.S. canoe kayak team for several years. And I guess it moved somewhere else now. But during that period, they actually had the U.S. championships there 1 year. So that's what I covered. Yeah.
Was it in Mirror Lake?
Yeah, it was like I said, if you go to Mirror Lake where the people swim, you've been to that area, right? Where they swim by the Lake Placid Lodge. There's a building right there on that beach.
Yeah. Oh, it's near the tennis courts. Near the tennis courts, then.
Yeah, that's what they built for the canoe kayak team when they were based there.
Oh,
so the actual event itself, though, was in Mirror Lake, is what is
that 1 year. Yeah, 1 year they had the U.S. World Champion, not the U.S. Championships at Mirror Lake. So that's and that's where I ran into that kid from my neighborhood, who actually was the guy that carried the torch or carried the flag when the U.S. went to the Olympics in London, I believe, or Australia, one of the two. But he was the one voted because he'd almost gotten killed when he was younger. He almost got electrocuted doing some work, and so he had an interesting story. So it impressed the people enough they voted for him to carry the flag at the Olympics. So.
Well, and of course we've had Matt Russell, win a triathlon, the Lake Placid Tri.
Yeah.
Also up there, I've been lucky enough to see that. I mean, that's a world-class event. If you ever get the opportunity to go up, I totally recommend just going up for the day and seeing that.
I was there to cover it, which wasn't as fun. Like I joked that was the one thing I liked to covering the least because it's so long. It started at 7 a.m. and you had to wait for the first local to finish before you could go. So sometimes the first local would finish 4 or 5 hours after the person that won the race. So that's why I was really thrilled when Amy Farrell got good at it, because I went there 1 year and 20 minutes after the women's winner, here comes Amy Farrell. I'm like, oh, thank God I can go home early today. The first day. And then you see these people that finish and they pass out at the finish line. So my other worry was the first local is going to come in and get to pass out, and I got to wait for the second local because they won't be able to talk. So, yeah, that was a long day if you went there to cover it, because it just was, like I said, and you don't know when they're going to come in either. So you're just sitting there waiting for each name. You're afraid to go to the bathroom because you might miss them while you're in the bathroom, or you're just kind of trapped there for 4 hours waiting for somebody to come across a line that so you can leave.
Well, one of our guests that we had on long ago, she's my varsity girls soccer coach, Jenna Chamberlain. She competed in that, and I remember saying, I think it was when we had Erica Backus on, because Matt Russell was a Lisbon grad. We talked about this, and the one thing I remember is watching Matt finish the race at right about the same time Jenna's heading out to start her 26-mile run. And I'm like, in my mind, that would drive me nuts. I'm like, are you kidding? Somebody's done already and I still got to run 26 miles.
That's the other weird thing about it is my dad ran marathons, and I remember how beat up he would be after a marathon. I mean, he couldn't walk normal for 2 or 3 days because his feet were full of blisters and all this. And I'm thinking, how do you do all that other stuff and then run 26 miles? Like, I don't, that's just one of those sports that I don't mind the Olympic one. I could see trying to do the Olympic version of it, which is shorter, but I can't see the Ironman. And the other funny thing was, for some reason, it made them look old. Like I would see somebody run by me and I would try to guess how old they were. And then they'd look them up in the program, and if I thought they looked 20 or 35, they were only 25, So I don't know if it was being in the sun all the time, but it seemed like they always looked older than they really were, like the people in that.
Well, Dave, Pete and I have been discussing, Dave, I think, is going to take the swim. Pete's got the bike and I'm going to do the run.
Yeah. Okay.
But our route's going to be a little bit different. It's just going to be like a pub crawl sort of.
And mine will be on motorcycle, not regular bike.
If you watch
Dave will be in a canoe.
Swimming person, you wonder how they don't drown, because they're all on top of each other, because there's like 5,000 people getting in Mirror Lake at once, and I'd almost stay at the back and wait till everybody else got in, then I'd go in.
Well, Cap, we got to start to wind things down here. I want to thank you for coming on. It's always great to have our media personalities come on. We can talk a little topical and you know, again, I always say this about our show. I find out something new. I had no idea that you were from the West Coast originally, went to the University of Arizona, that you've been here. So that's great to know. So glad that you took the time to come on. And we're glad that you're kind of getting back to some normal work. We're hoping that we can give you a month full of soccer and cross country.
And I will say, by the way, that Kevin O'Neill was the men's basketball assistant coach when I was at Arizona. So we had that in common the first time I met him up here. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, he's somebody I've got him on my short list. Maybe Dave Bartlett. Does Dave Bartlett have a Kevin O'Neill connection?
Kevin O'Neill recruited me when I was in high school. So that's one of my claim to fame. I was recruited by an NBA coach as a basketball player. He was at North Country Community College at the time, but yeah, I can leave that part out.
It's a step.
And I have had the pleasure. I saw Kevin. I wish we would have talked about. I don't know if we did or not. The night we interviewed Weasel and Mikey Martin, I was at Chateauguay basketball camp one year, and Kevin O'Neill came in to speak. Wow. He spoke to a bunch of 3rd through 8th graders like they were NBA players. Let's just leave it at that. Oh my goodness. I'm like, I can't believe he just said some of the things that he said.
Well, I remember he had a clinic in Malone one year I went to, and he was starting to tell stories about Bobby Knight, and he kind of stops and looks at me because I was there. He's like, none of this is going in the paper, right? You know.
Sounds like him.
I believe it.
Yeah, but he's always been funny.
Well, again,
I couldn't use some of his language either when I was talking about him earlier. So
no, I know. And like I said, I heard that language at Chateauguay basketball camp. I was like, holy cow, this is something else. This isn't even meant for my varsity team. So, well, I hope maybe we can get him on the show. I'd love to get him on. That would be awesome. But
he is a former Hammond coach too, so he's got
True. Well, Cap, again, we want to thank you for coming on, taking the time to do this, and joining the ranks of our show, and we wish you the best. We hope that everything goes well. We hope that we can supply you with a full year of high school sports.
All right, thanks.
Knock on wood. That's the goal here. I don't know if it's going to happen, but
hopefully no flies landed on my head during this.
Yeah, didn't see any.
Didn't see any. No.
No, didn't see it. No.
All right, Cap. I want to thank you personally for coming on, and we really appreciate you. And hopefully we'll cross paths again here shortly.
Thanks.
That's going to be it for tonight on ESS Empire State Sports and a Wise Guy Sports Talk Show. Joey Ream, Dave Bartlett, myself, and our special guest Cap Carey saying goodnight and stay safe, everybody.